The Reach is your ideal kingdom to live in this terrifying world created by George Martin. The rest of the kingdoms have their serious flaws, while the Reach remains sunny and happy. The North has its cold, wildlings, and whatever else makes its way around the wall. The Vale also has terrible winters and violent mountain clans, let alone having mountains all around you. The Stormlands have an annoying amount of rain, and they, along with the Riverlands, have unfortunate positioning, keeping them in a constant state of warring with neighboring kingdoms. The Iron Islands have it the worst, just a completely miserable place that rely on raiding others just to get by. The Westerlands aren't too bad if you're lucky enough to be born in a house with mines or wealth, but they have lions running around, so no thanks. And Dorne is a desert with little water, so... But the Reach. This is the place to live. There's a reason why this kingdom is the most populous in all of Westeros. Its size is only second to the north, but all this land is very fertile, so even the small folk can live comfortably. It's the most fertile kingdom, which is why the wealth is only second to the Westerlands, whose gold mines are running dry. There aren't a lot of iconic locations here in comparison to somewhere like the north. Instead, the lands are filled with houses that share one really cool thing in common. The houses in the Reach claim descent from the mythical king named Garth Greenhand. Supposedly, the High King of the First Men, Garth Greenhand, either led his people over to Westeros from Essos, or was already in Westeros just hanging out before any of the First Men crossed the Arm of Dorne. This would make him the first and only man on the continent, shared between giants and children of the forest. He was this godlike figure that brought life to the land wherever he went. He taught the First Men how to farm and live off their harvests. Before him, hunting and gathering was the only way to eat. It seems like Garth was smart enough to not settle in Dorne and make his way to the Reach. There's a reason why the children of the forest called Dorne the Empty Land. As funny as this sounds, he was even capable of making women fertile. It's hard not to believe it when you see his list of children. I think detailing the Reach through his children would be a lot more fun than how I usually make these videos. The first of his 13 children was known as Garth the Gardener. He built the castle Highgarden atop a hill and became the first king of the Reach, and the founder of House Gardener. The throne was a growing oak that was planted by Garth Greenhand. House Gardener was able to bring each other king in the Reach into their kingdom and ruled for thousands of years. You don't hear much about them in the current story since Aegon Targaryen and his sister wives caused the family's extinction. During Aegon's conquest, the Gardener King and Lannister King went against the dragons in a battle called the Field of Fire. House Gardener got roasted and the Targaryens appointed House Tyrell, who were just the high stewards for House Gardener, to rule over the Reach in their place. Jon the Oak was the son of Garth Greenhand he apparently had with a giantess. He was this extremely tall man who was credited for incorporating chivalry into Westeros' culture. He would be the founder of House Oakheart of Old Oak. They are one of the families that have had to deal with countless battles with Dorne. Garth Greenhand had twin sons, Harlan the Hunter and Herndon of the Horn, who founded House Tarly of Hornhill. What you're probably thinking is, how can a couple of guys be the founders of a house? Well, they both married the same woman and she happened to be a woods witch. She lived on the hill also called Hornhill, where their home is built. House Tarly is one of the Marcher Lords in the Reach that rule in the Dornish marches, so you know they've had tons of battles with Dornishmen. They have a very strong military tradition, which explains Samwell Tarly's father's reaction to him. I went over the Dornish marches and the Red Mountains in my Dorne and Stormlands videos, so I'll try not to be repetitive by going over it again. Rose of Red Lake is a daughter of Garth and founder of House Crane of Red Lake. Rose was said to be able to skin change into a crane, and that women of this family can still do the same. There is an actual lake here and their castle just shares its name. The lake used to be known as Blue Lake, but after one of Garth's sons, Brandon of the Bloody Blade, killed so many children of the forest here, it had to be renamed to something more appropriate. Brandon of the Bloody Blade is said to be either a father or ancestor of Bran the Builder, who founded House Stark. Maris the Maid was one of Garth's daughters. Her beauty inspired the first ever tourney in Westeros to fight for her hand in marriage. While 50 lords were fighting it out for her, she married Uther of the Hightower. House Hightower was likely founded long before these two, however. The Hightower where this family lives is in the massive city called Oldtown. It's one of the largest, oldest, and richest cities in Westeros. It was built around the Hightower, and it's so old that the Maesters can't even agree on who made it. The early Hightowers lived in a fortress made of black stone on a small island called Battle Isle. Black stone is this mysterious and ancient material found all over this world. To better defend their home, the Hightowers built walls around the black stone and a tower atop of it. Out of making towers out of wood didn't work out, Uther of the Hightower hired Bran the Builder to make one out of stone, and it continues to stand tall today. There is so much more to the city aside from the High Tower. Uther of the High Tower and Maris the Maid's 2 sons are responsible for the creation of the citadel. The younger brother was bedridden most of his life, so spent his time obsessing over knowledge. He had experts of all fields come to Old Town to answer the world's questions. He would live a short life, but his older brother had the citadel built to continue their search for answers. It became a place for people to study and become maesters for all of Westeros. The towers and domes of the citadel are all connected with stone bridges that have houses all along of it. The oldest building of the citadel is the Ravenry of the Isle of Ravens. Old Town has small islands all around it on the Honeywine River, and the Isle of Ravens was once the stronghold of a pirate lord. Also in Old Town is the Starry Sept. This was like the Faith of the Seven's headquarters before it relocated to Baelor Sept in King's Landing thousands of years later. Bors the Breaker was the son of Garth and founder of House Bulwer of Blackcrown. Bors would only drink bull's blood, and it resulted in him having the strength of 20 men. Their sigil depicts this legend. Ellen Eversweet was a daughter who loved honey so much she sought out the king of bees. In his mountain hive, they made a pact that she would care for all his descendants. She was the first beekeeper and considered the mother to House Beesbury of Honeyholt. Fosta Archer was a son known for shooting apples off girls' heads. He founded House Fossaway of Cedar Hall, and of course their sigil would have an apple on it. This house would divide into a branch family following the events of the Ashford Tourney in 209 AC. One Fossaway was fighting on the opposite side of his cousin during a trial, and it caused him to start House Fossaway of Newbarrow. You see this all go down in the Dunk and Egg short story The Hedge Knight, arguably the best one out of the 3 George Martin has out. House Fossaway of Newbarrow has a green apple for its sigil instead of Cedar Hall's red. Newbarrow's location hasn't been stated yet, however. Ashford is also known for being the location where Robert Baratheon was handed his only defeat during his rebellion. The large Tyrell army was being led by Randall Tarley of Hornhill, aka Sam's dad. Robert didn't have the numbers to go up against the Tyrell army, so he retreated to avoid losing lives. Robert would group up with his allies and win the war, so it wasn't much of a defeat really. Rowan Goldtree was a daughter of Garth and founder of House Rowan of Goldengrove. All she's known for is planting an apple wrapped in her golden hair. It grew into a tree that had gold bark, leaves, and fruit. This house has the title of Marshal of the North March, making them pretty powerful. Gilbert of the Vines was a son of Garth and founder of House Redwine of the Arbor. He taught the people on his island to make wine. Now the Arbor is renowned for making the best wine in Westeros. It also has the largest fleet in Westeros. They, along with the Shield Islands, have a history of being raided by the Ironborn, so this powerful fleet became necessary. One of Garth's sons conquered all 4 of the islands that make up the Shield Islands. His name was Owen Oakenshield, and it's also said he drove out mythical creatures called Selkies and Merlings out of the islands and back into the sea. The Shields gets its name for protecting the Mander River that gives access to the rest of the kingdom from an Ironborn attack. They've also made it their responsibility to warn everyone of an attack by lighting watchtowers. They were once called the Misty Islands before the Gardener Kings drove out the Iron Men and fortified the islands. Oakenshield is ruled by House Hewitt. House Chester rules over Greenshield. House Grimm has Grey Shield, and South Shield is ruled by House Surrey. Flores the Fox is the last child of Garth Greenhand to talk about. She's known for being the cleverest of Garth's children. She had 3 husbands and none of them were aware of this. She didn't conquer any land or anything like her siblings, but her sons from each of her husbands became the founders of House Florent, House Ball, and House Peak. It's also believed that Lan the Clever, who founded House Lannister, may have been a bastard child of hers or her sister Rowan Goldtree. House Florent did rule over Brightwater, but in the current story this castle is given to the Tyrells after House Florent supported Stannis in the war. We don't know much about House Ball. All we know is that they rule somewhere in the Reach. House Peak are Marcher Lords of Starpike. They once had this rivalry with House Manderley of Dustinbury. The Manderleys claimed the Mander was named after them. When the Manderleys were becoming too powerful in the Reach, a Gardener King allowed House Peak to run them out of the kingdom. House Peak took over Dustinbury, and House Manderley found a new home in the north. At one point, House Peak had 3 castles under them, as depicted in their sigil, but would eventually be stripped of 2 of them and left with only Starpike. All the other houses and locations have yet to be given an exact location on the Westeros map. A couple roads that I think are worth mentioning is the Rose Road and Ocean Road. The Rose Road is a path from King's Landing to Old Town and Highgarden where it meets with the Ocean Road. A a path from Lannisport in the Western Lands to Highgarden. Hope you enjoyed this map detailing considering it was requested by a lot of you guys in the comments. I feel like I've been making a lot of these, so I do want to change it up a bit by making some videos I've had planned for a while before turning and finishing the rest of the 7 kingdoms. Thanks for watching.